So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this session today. We shall begin right away, and the rest of the participants shall join us as we continue. So at this moment, I would like to show you the schedule. I think probably you've had a look at it prior, but I'll show it to you anyway, so that we know how much time we are spending on what. So right now it is 11:03, and this is where I begin to give you the background information about the champions for SDGs and updates. And then after that, we shall have the session where Sofina shall be moderating and our guests shall be speaking to us as communicated to you earlier in the poster. After that, we shall have an open discussion and a Q&A session, and then closing remarks, and then that will be it for today. So also allow me to share with you a brief presentation about Champions for SDGs. Some of you already know about Champions for SDGs. This is a youth network that is based in Nairobi, Kenya, that was founded in March 2019 to inform young people more about what sustainable development goals are and their role. Sustainable development goals are 17 in number, and I know some of you might have encountered them in your work, or probably you focus on 1, 2, or 3 of them in the organizations you work for or volunteer, or even in your institutions. So the aim is to ensure that young people actively take part in global sustainable development. And just to highlight some of the main activities that we had in 2019, some meetup sessions to prepare for our activities. And then there is this activity that we had during the International Youth Day, and we discussed about the role of young people in all levels of sustainable development. And then there was this one for World Mental Health Day, and we shared information about how young people can improve their mental health outcomes. Later on, we had a session on International Day of People with Disabilities, and then we spoke about SDG 10, addressing how inequalities can be reduced. Some other organizations have invited us to sessions where they taught us about green buildings. Later on in the year, we were awarded under the youth category by the SDGs Kenya Forum as a proactive youth initiative that is creating awareness on SDGs. So this year, all our activities have been virtual, and the first one was a tweet chat where we sought to address mental health for young people. And this happened in May. And then later afterwards, during the International Youth Day, we had a session with other Young African Leaders Initiative alumni and an additional colleague from Liberia. And we spoke about, again, how young people can be better involved in sustainable development at all levels. Later on, we had 2 sessions on mental health on Zoom. The previous one was a tweet chat. And then later on, we held another session on reproductive health to address the rising levels of teenage pregnancies that came about as a result of the lockdown. So those were 2 sessions for reproductive health. Later on, we organized a first session for education for sustainable development. And today is the second session after this one, which happened in September. Later on, we held a last session that was addressing climate action. And we had participants from other countries of Africa, and we discussed about how young people can contribute to climate action and opportunities and recommendations. So today, we'll be speaking about building equitable, inclusive, and supportive learning environments as part of addressing education for sustainable development. And Sofina shall introduce our panelists for the day. Our social platforms are LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can check them out. And before I finish this introduction, I would like to highlight Sustainable Development Goal number 4 and some of the key aspects that it seeks to address. So the ones I've highlighted, I'll just mention quickly. These are things you can be able to read at globalgoals.org. But generally, SDG 4 seeks to address equitable and quality primary and secondary education, early childhood development, ensure affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, including university, relevant skills, eliminating gender disparities, ensuring literacy and numeracy, knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development among others. So learners should acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, among others. I'll skip 4A for now and go to scholarships available for developing countries, increase the supply of qualified teachers. So I've skipped 4.4A because this is what we are speaking about today. Which is to build and upgrade education facilities that are child disability and gender sensitive and provide safe, non-violent, inclusive, and effective learning environments for everybody. So our guests will be able to share perspectives and best practices on this. I wouldn't want to share so much text with you so that it gets boring again. So our hashtags for this event are as on your screen. So in case you are tweeting, use these hashtags and you'll be able to follow the conversation. So once more, welcome again, everybody. It's now exactly 11:10. And now I would like to welcome Sofina to just introduce herself and then introduce our guests. And then we'll be able to interact with them as we go. Feel free to type on the chats in case you have any questions or any concerns, and I'll be here to support and assist. Thank you so much. Welcome, Sofina.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Arnold. And it's a pleasure to have all of you here on this platform. And I think first things first, it's just a matter of introduction. So I'll start with an introduction of myself and then go ahead with the introduction of the guests. First, let me confirm. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
All right. So my name is Sofina Merino. I work at Mombo Sacco, but also I am a champion for education in Kenya. And I'm very passionate about young people and all of us working together to improve education standards in this country. So at this juncture, I'll request our guests for today to each just say hello, and then I'll do the proper introduction as now we begin the session. So maybe I can start with John Mwati. You can just say hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, John.
Yes, we can. All right. Thank you, John. Abdul Karim Taraja, are you there?
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much. My name is
a young leader,
and I'm here.
I'm passionate on
transformation. I'm live and audible now. Thank you so much.
Yes, you are. Sorry, John. There seems to be a network issue. We had you a bit later. Sorry about that. Dr. Christine Juguna.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy and delighted to join you. And I hope we'll have a very good conversation and discussion. Thank you, Sofina.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christine. And then I'm not sure, I haven't seen Daisy, but Daisy Mugira, are you there? All right, no problem. We shall proceed. So once again, I'd just like to set a backdrop to why we are having this conversation today. We're talking about building equitable, inclusive, and supportive learning environments. Now, I think one of the issues, how we've seen the failure in our education system, it has come out clearly during this corona period. So when we talk about equity and equitable education, the question then becomes, we all know for a fact that if a student goes to a public school, we all know they've just been staying at home and helping with the chores. And maybe it's the initiative of the parent to make sure that this student is learning. But we also know very actively that if a student goes to a private school, they have been having online classes, and I'm even told to some extent they've actually been having exams. So which means this has not been a lost year for them. So when you talk about equitability, we are saying all children have a right to education. So why is it that we have this disparity when it comes to access of the education in Kenya? And then when you talk about inclusivity, we are talking about one, the issue of gender. Can girls access education? Can boys equally access education? But we are looking also at the minority groups, such as students with disability. Are our schools well equipped to be able to handle children and students who have disability, not only to reach the school and learn, but also provide the adequate tools that are needed to make their learning easier and more efficient? And then finally, we are talking about supportive learning environments. Again, I'll bring this up a lot of times because I think it will keep recurring, the issue of technology, in the case of another pandemic, God forbid, but will all our students be able to access the education? Right now, we are talking about the CBC, we're trying to get rid of the teacher chalkboard method of learning and just allow for creativity and innovativeness around the students. So how well equipped are we as either a ministry or stakeholders to be able to ensure that? We are also looking at infrastructure. I mean, all through the country right now, we are looking at the desks that were commissioned by the Ministry of Education just being given out. In other cases, we are hearing that there was misappropriation of funds. So I feel this is something that needs to be done equitably in all the counties because it's coming from the top office. So, that's basically our topic in a nutshell, building equitable, inclusive, and supportive learning environments. And I know we've had discussions, we always have discussions around this issue. And even today, we all know that indeed, we know the problems that are there in the education sector. So our discussion for today will actually be looking into the solutions. In what aspect, you may ask? We're looking at solutions in terms of who is to be held responsible. If we are because we tend to do a lot of finger pointing, myself included. So when we're doing all this finger pointing, who are we pointing it to? So that's the first question. The second question is, are these institutions aware of their responsibility, so that even as we're finger pointing, we actually have a model. We have a model of accountability that we can look into. So I'm very privileged to have a powerful panel who will be addressing this issue from different perspectives. And just before I continue, I'd like to welcome Daisy to just say hello. Daisy Mugira, can you hear me? Daisy, I can see, Daisy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Sofina.
Yes, just say hello.
Hello, hi everyone. I am glad to join you and I look forward to learning and sharing. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Daisy. Karibu sana, karibu sana. And you know,
Thank
I'm
you.
just so happy that you're able to say hello because we get to start with you. Now, let me just give a brief background of Daisy Mugira. Daisy is the founding director of Dear Little Sisters Foundation. And how I got to know about her job is that through her organization, they've been able to save young girls from vices in society, or rather the patriarchal system of society, whereby girls get married early or get pregnant. So what her institution does is give these girls a second chance by fighting for them, be it legally, but secondly, allowing them to integrate back into the education sector. So Daisy, we appreciate the work that you continue to do. And just to go in so that you can have your session, I'd like you to just speak about the challenges and the real issues that are being observed in the education sector. And I want you to speak about that aspect of students who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, because I'm trying to avoid the word poor, but backgrounds where, well, by default, they're not able to access resources. And even as you paint that picture for us, I also want us, you being an NGO in the field, working and providing solutions. So I want you to share with us which are those roles you feel that NGOs and civil societies can play towards building equitable schools with more inclusive and supporting learning environments. Karibu.
Thank you, Sofina. Sorry, I have been all over, but I am glad to join in. I'm sorry to join in a little bit late. Thanks once again for this opportunity to join in this very important discussion. My name is Daisy Kosgei Mugira, as you've said. I'm the founder of Dear Little Sister Foundation, which focuses on girls and women empowerment. And we especially deal with teenage pregnancy issues, which is so much related with education, which we are currently discussing. The two questions which you've asked me to address, one is the issue of real issues that face students in disadvantaged or poor households as far as education is concerned. And the first thing I want to talk about is the issue of resources. And the first is schools. You realize that most of these students walk long distances to access schools. You find children walking as far as 5 to even 7 kilometers to get to public schools. And this is because no private person is willing to set up schools where poor people are, because first of all, they know they are not going to be able to afford the high school fees, and therefore they are left to go to public schools, which are sometimes very far from where they stay. Walking so far to school makes these students not able to give their all when it comes to learning, because by the time the students get to school, they are tired, and you get to realize that most of these students from poor backgrounds do not even have decent shoes. They don't even have a decent school uniform. And so increasing the distance to their travel is that just something else. So by the time they are getting to school, they are not even in a position to concentrate and give it their all. Secondly, you realize that most of these public schools in those areas do not have enough teachers, they do not have enough learning facilities like desks and books. You realize that the student teacher is appealing. You can find one teacher taking up to 2 classes or even 3 classes. The the students get not good at all. Another thing is the issue of nutrition and food. these students from poor backgrounds do not get proper diets at home, you realize that their parents are struggling to make ends meet, and therefore they do not get good food, they do not get balanced diets at home. Some do not even have good places to sleep. So it is not convenient for them to concentrate in their studies, because when these students get back home, first of all, they are struggling. Some of them go to school hungry. And you see, you cannot teach an hungry student. You cannot make these students concentrate if they are first of all hungry. So that is a real issue. And another issue is you cannot expect them to even revise when they are at home, because you realize some of them, in fact, most of them do not have access to electricity. So they don't even have a source of light to look at their books and study. They are struggling in terms of basic needs. And most importantly, and something that is so close to my heart, most of these students from the poor backgrounds, especially girls, they lack access to the most important necessities like sanitary pads. And this exposes them now to situations like teenage pregnancies, because they get vulnerable to people who take advantage of them, as they promise to provide for them sanitary pads and other needs that they have. So I feel as the civil societies and NGOs, there's so much we can do to ensure these issues are addressed. And first of all, we can try and economically empower the poor families so that they are able to provide a good environment for the students back at home. That way, they will be able to give their all when it comes to their studies. Also, the NGOs and civil societies can partner with the local administrations to ensure that such injustices like teenage pregnancies and culprits walking free are brought to book. And also, those girls who have dropped out of school because of challenges like teenage pregnancies are readmitted back to school and given the support that they need so that they can pursue their education. Also, the civil societies can help keep the government in check, because we realize that it's not fair for those children in poor backgrounds not to have enough teachers and not to have sufficient classrooms. You realize that some of them are studying even under trees. Some of them do not even have desks to sit on. And it is very unfortunate, because during bad weather conditions, learning is completely interrupted and they cannot continue with their studies. So as the NGOs and civil societies, we should keep the government in check to ensure that these resources, like enough teachers, enough books, enough classrooms, also get to these poor students from those disadvantaged backgrounds. Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daisy. And I think you've outlined something very important right there, because we're talking as the NGOs and the civil society, it is our role to keep the government in check. You know, we're talking about advocacy. I think, especially in Kenya, it's only the NGOs and the civil societies that can be able to mobilize effectively, because you know you can get funding to actually mobilize and speak. I don't say speak against the government, but speak in order for services to be enhanced by the government. So that's a very powerful point right there. And then there's something also very important you said, you know, partnering with the local authorities, and not just when it comes to the issues of injustice, but even in the issues of providing resources and providing infrastructure. And I think we can say that is something that continues to be done very well and really helps the education sector because, you know, we look at aspects such as religious schools, that's maybe the Catholic schools and other religions who have schools. And then we also have NGOs, you know, which are able to reach students in the farthest parts of the country. So it's true that local authorities, we need to partner with them. And then finally, we talked about economically empowering these families so that they are also able to step up on their own 2 feet and actually be their own advocates. So thank you so much for that, Daisy. I appreciate your points, Asante. So maybe just to offer a guideline, I'll request we'll just have all our speakers present, and then thereafter, if there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the suggestion box, or yes, and then they shall be tackled thereafter. So I want us to move to Mr. John Mwati, and John Mwati is the Executive Director of Transcending Africa Leadership Foundation. The one thing I want to point out is that John is still a university student. And when we speak about education, it's not only the nursery level or what we call shule ya chekechea, it's also the primary, the secondary, and then it ends with further education, which is gotten in the university. So I'd like Mr. John Mwati to just, you know, share with us from his experience what can be done in institutions of higher learning to create an equitable learning space with more inclusive and supporting and learning environment. But also, John, I want to request you to address this issue. And I want you to put yourself, because, you know, you've had the platform to interact. If you were to be a voice for the young people and the young adults, you know, all across the board, what are your observations and what would you recommend? We know we have steps are being taken, but what further action would you recommend to make better the education sector? John Mwati, karibu.
Thank you very much, Sofina. And also thank you for organizing this webinar. But most importantly is just to say that the issue of education in our continent, in our country, Kenya, it is something that needs to be taken with a lot of seriousness, or rather given a closer look at it and focus. But then as we talk about the question that you have actually raised to me, we are asking ourselves, there is this part of, we need to ask ourselves, where are we coming from and where do we want to go? And you know, many years ago, when you look at the people who are actually teaching our schools today, the lecturers, the professors, when they were students back then at university and college, the professor was the sole source of knowledge. But today, as we speak, it's very much diverse. It's very much impractical to say that the professor has autonomy of knowledge, you know, monotony, you know. And you actually realize that knowledge is actually being found right, left, and center because of the advancement in technology. And so when we realize that, even before we go and talk about what is actually what needs to be done, then we need to ask ourselves, what has shifted? What is the dynamics in the classroom today as we speak? And I think to a great extent, we have come to a point where we are even seeing virtual reality happening in our times. When you actually relate it with the global pandemic that has actually hit us, this generation has never experienced a pandemic. But then you actually realize that we will continue, even though a virus can, a vaccine can be found, then we will end up perhaps continuing with the state of how things are. So we might have a way of ensuring that we move along with the pandemic. And that we have seen that indeed everything can move on with this life. I know there is that disruption, but also we are seeing everything just coming back to normal. And the normality is now, the new normal is that students are forced to go to virtual classrooms. And so that is a new paradigm. And I think when we put our minds into that, then we are asking ourselves, how do we make learning? How do we make education an all-inclusive agenda? You realize when you read the Constitution, you actually realize that quality education is a basic right for any Kenyan child. And so when you talk about now the aspect of inclusivity at the classroom, you come to a point when you understand that indeed a lot needs to be done with the reality that we have said, that the source of knowledge is not just the professor, or the source of knowledge is not just the teacher. And so we need to come to a point where we ask ourselves, do we have the facilities of providing access to information, access to knowledge for these individual people and stakeholders? And now this brings me to the point of partnerships. A recent back, I attended a global conference that was held here at the University of Nairobi, and it was the International Triple Helix Summit. And the Triple Helix model talks about the academia, the industry, and the government coming together to provide a sustainable platform, to provide sustainable solutions in the education sector. And when you understand that the education cannot be solely left to the government, if you understand that the government cannot just be left with the agenda of education, then we might conclude that stakeholder engagement, just like my sister Daisy has said, it's very much important. And so the issue of inclusivity, according to me, will come to a point where we are asking ourselves, is enough being done to provide facilities, to provide these equipments to ensure that students have access to learning? And as I continue, I want to let us know that Africa, we are lagging behind because of the kind of leadership that we have. And when you look at the education, we also want to have, actually the SDG talks about quality education. And if you're gonna focus your mind and put your mind on quality education, then we need to see whether our education standards meet the international standards. And technology cannot be left behind in all this. And so as we talk about the education system and all that, I think also we need to come to a point where we are asking ourselves, what we are learning in school, is it even relevant to the current age and time? We are talking about the great disruption that is going to be brought by the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is already happening in countries, the developing countries. Africa, we are not even experienced the third industrial revolution. And so the issue of, talk about artificial intelligence, talk about machine learning, virtual reality in classrooms, and all that is being experienced in other countries. Africa, we are still talking about the teacher-student ratio, still talking about the physical infrastructure of classrooms. You know, we have seen pictures going around of students in the arid areas and areas where they are prone to floods. You see the classrooms are actually, they are distorted. Everything is just chaos. And so there is the part of bringing our leaders to accountability. And that cannot be achieved without the action of the stakeholders. That's why I'm talking about SDG 17, partnerships for this goal. There will call for a very robust and dynamic talks and holding these leaders into accountable. But then, because I'm talking about university students and university education and curriculum, there is a sense in which we also need to understand something I mentioned about what we are learning in school. If at all we want education, then it must be quality education, because we don't just want to see students going to school. That's not, it's an issue, but to a great extent, we also want to see the quality of education, what is being offered at the classrooms. So a student comes to school, but whatever they are getting, and they graduate with a degree, magna cum laude, that's amazing, a first class honors. But when you go to the job market, whatever you did was actually relevant. The employer wants to ask you, what do you have? What are you bringing on the table? A student who has done statistics, economics and statistics from a university in Kenya, but cannot even do the simple tasks of analysis. If they are given an Excel document, they cannot do anything on it. And yet you want to say you got a first class honors. That is nonsense to an employer. That doesn't care. It is it is something that no one cares what degree you have. I think what is important is the quality of what are you bringing on the table. The question of what are you bringing on the table. And I think that's really, really an amazing part. Just to look at what I had written down so that we also get to know that capacity building in our schools will really, really also come in handy. Developing the resources, the skills for the teachers, sharpening every institution that is actually mandated to ensuring that we have quality education. As I culminate my few minutes, I think we have come to understand that this is an age of disruption. And as you have asked me, Sofina, what would be, if I was to talk on behalf of the students, what would I say? I think I would come to a point where we as young people, we need to be we need to be aggressive in search of skills, you know? Like I said, when you look at the World Economic Forum and what they had always advocated for about the fourth industrial revolution, in the next couple of years, things are going to change. And things have already started changing. Perhaps not in here in Africa, but I can tell you this wave will just hit everything out and everyone. So regardless of what you did in school, ensure that you have a skill. And as I bring this to a close, look at the way we were doing, look at what is happening currently, even here in Kenya. When a teacher wants to mark the register, those days when we were in school, it was listing everyone, and you just calls out your name and you say whether you're present or absent. But today you just get into school and the biometric registration is at the gate, and it indicates that it clocks in the time that you have actually joined school, that point. And I think the other thing is also it gets to ensure that automation comes in handy. I think that is it what I have for us, unless I have left out anything.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. That was, I think, you've really challenged us. I like the aspects that you've raised of the fourth industrial revolution. Are we ready as Africa? Are we ready as Kenya? And that just throws the ball a whole way around, because we all know we're not ready, but we can be. And in addressing how we can be ready, you've talked once again, and this is something that keeps coming up, about stakeholder engagement. And you've said something very important, whereby you mentioned we cannot leave the education sector to the government only. We cannot, just do the blame game and say, it's the government's responsibility to make sure that everyone accesses quality education, but we need to come together as stakeholders. And then the other thing that you've said, and I like how you've done this, we've talked about, yes, we have these issues in the education sector, but even students by themselves need to be held responsible, be aggressive, be it in seeking out opportunities, or even just calling out and being whistleblowers about issues that are affecting them in the sector. And this just takes me back to, we've had different cases of university students taking to the streets, demanding for justice, demanding for services from their universities. So yes, it is very possible for the student fraternity, for the stakeholders, including the students, to participate in improving the education sector, as we look to achieving and equipping our students with information about how to achieve the fourth industrial revolution in Africa. And with that, I just wanted to join in with something that you mentioned, and you talked about different people pulling the strings where they should. And at this juncture, I want to welcome Abdul Karim Taraja. And Abdul Karim Taraja is the Executive Director and founder of Elgon Education Center. Sorry, Elgon Center for Education. So for Abdul Karim, first Karibu, and I want you to share with us, you've been in that field. When you talk about stakeholder, you have been an active stakeholder. So what support do you feel is needed, to up your game as stakeholders in the industry. And why I'm asking this in terms of support is, right now we have the policy on no tuition for the students. Now that was a good initiative. However, what that does during this period is that you're not allowed to bring students together, to study and, just to engage in education activities. So, it's such a perspective. That's just one example. But what support do you feel is needed for the stakeholders in this field? And then the second question I'd like you to address is, tell us some of the success stories you have as Elgon Center for Education. But also, what are those success stories we have that have been done by partners and stakeholders, people in the NGO world, individuals, which are contributing to growth and development of the education sector in Kenya? Karibu.
Thank you so much, Sofina, and everybody, and thank you so much for having this opportunity to discuss on matters of education, things that are so much dearly into my life, and something that pushed me to coming up with this Elgon Center for Education. I'm the founder of this organization that is a new, we're still young organization. Elgon Center comes from Mount Elgon, actually. That's where I am currently. That's where I was born and raised. And Mount Elgon is one of these marginalized communities in terms of development, in terms of infrastructure, especially access to education. And personally, I had a lot of challenges in my academic journey that necessitated me to say that at one given time, I have to come back home and maybe try to do something. And so, as Sofina, you have put it very clearly, there are so many policies that the government comes on with that keep on changing, keep on affecting how education is working. And I've been actually looking at the different kind of education reports that have been developed over years since 1964, especially the Ominde report that was developed in 1964, where they had these very good recommendations that were promoting unity and nationalism for the students. That was time that the country was now transitioning from the colonial era to the independence. And all along, we've been having so many other reports that always keep on changing. And these reports actually were influencing some of the policies that the Ministry of Education has been taking all along. And it is very interesting that currently we are talking about, recently when the government said they don't have to have, as you have put it, the issue of no tuition. And then this thing has really affected so many other young people out here. The moment we say no tuition, we have 100% transition. We have a lot of so many things. And because like Daisy talked about the issue of underprivileged. The reason why I came up with the Elgon Center for Education is because of the underprivileged of these ideas, and I have been able to move across, especially schools in Mount Elgon and the Trans Nzoia regions, trying to do this kind of mentorship, and it's really something else. It even shocks that currently we're talking about promoting inclusivity and creating favorable environment, but when you come back and down to this level, you really find out that we in fact, we need to start talking about having these structures first, even before talking about the quality of education, because there are schools that do not have even classrooms. There are schools that do not, guys stay and open. When it rains, they close. The class ends there. So it's really tough, and this kind of policies are really, the challenge of these policies is that the way they are formulated and made is not actually the people-centered. It's not from the bottom up. It's something else. Looking from the Simeon Ominde report of 1964 all the way to Maina Wanjigi in 1982, 83, and even from the Peter Kashati report, to the COEG report, the competence-based curriculum, it all have some challenges in it on how the process of formulation. That's where now it brings a lot of issues, the successes or misdeeds in these things. So I would like to talk about the policies and what actually need to be done as you have put it. These policies, like no tuition, is really has affected so many. Currently, with this pandemic, it has also stretched and it made even stretched the lack of inclusivity, created that poor environment, you know, because so many young people, so many learners cannot access any education. When you come here to in Mount Elgon, for example, you will find out that these guys are not even there. They even don't know about this issue of digital learning because they can't afford and they have no orientation about it. Not even the learners themselves, even the teachers themselves do not have this kind of skills that can actually help them to concentrate or even guide their children and the learners in this thing. So it is something that is interesting, but then the support, what support needed to transform education? From the time I was working about Elgon Center for Education in 2018 and 2019, I actually moved a lot, visiting a lot of schools, both primary schools and high schools. And I realized that there are so many things that needed to be done. You know, apart from the infrastructure of the issue, apart from the life skills and everything, much is actually needed to be done. And there's something I talk about here, like how can we improve our academic environment, infrastructure? And in last year, 2019, I visited a certain school at the border of Kenya and Uganda. And this school, they were just studying in a church, a very big church, has been divided into like 5 classrooms from grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and then class 5. And it was so chaotic. And then this school has been looking forward to get like the CDF funds to just put up a structure. And then the same CDF is full of politics, you know. The MP in charge is saying that, okay, this guy is somebody who's associated with the other, like the other opponent politician. So it becomes so many toasting up. But then when he got, finally he got like a 1 million shillings to do this, to set up a structure. And what this guy did, and I was impressed with it, is that he took this money and talked with his board of management, and they did not go the tendering process, but they just sat down and say, this money is so small, how can we make good use of it? So they just started building 4 classrooms with a total of 1 million by not involving this process of tendering, but they just looked for fundis and transportation and everything. So you bring these things, you are paid you as you go. At the end of the day, they were able to come up with 4 classrooms with the roofing, and they just needed some few amount to go. So what am I saying here? I'm saying here, in order for us to improve the academic infrastructure, we have to relook into the tendering system of setting up the standard classrooms and the costing card. Resources at least can be modeled in a way that they are under the school board and the principal, head teacher be in charge of it to see that now they are going to do this thing. This actually will cut out the issues that the kickbacks from the politicians and the tendering processes that is incurred. Also, it's also my suggestion that the Ministry of Education to have the Education Development Fund that can help in building the infrastructure development that is totally independent of the political class. Because currently, you see, the development actually is at the mercy of these CDF offices. And sometimes they are so much political, it takes so long. There is the issue of kickbacks here and there. At the end of the day, not much is being done. Also, the policy formulation should actually be done adopting the bottom-up approach to give all the stakeholders a voice in the changes affecting education. I'm saying this because most of these policies that the government comes in actually starts from up, but it affects people down. Even look at the development of this the CBC curriculum. there are so many challenges that the other education sectors were not fully brought together to talk about. Like last year when we had a conference on education, you realize that most of these teachers and teachers unions were not present there simply because they thought they were not involved really in this thing. So there are so many things. And then maybe to add more is that the school fraternity, the teachers, learners, administrative units should cooperate with other local leaders, the way Daisy said. And this is where the partnership comes in order now to engage in so many other things. Also, we need to build the capacity of educators in serving frequent induction. I realized that in most of these teachers, since they were hired, most of them have never gone to any in-service induction at all. You know, some has risen to the position of deputy, the head teacher, but they have never had this training to improve on their skills. So you find out that they have a lot of issues and challenges. Maybe to end, if you can give me like 2 minutes, the policymaker should also enable, motivate, and accelerate educators who successfully integrate education into their teaching and make education more relevant to the demands. And also parents, because I realized in my mentorship program, parents, actually most of the parents in these villages, they are spectators. They are the sitters. They are not, everything they have left to politicians and the teachers. You see, so they are not playing their role well. And in my in our organization, as I will be talking about what we're doing, I will briefly talk about that. Also, the young people with our ambitious mindset can really come together and forge ahead a united stand on supporting and promoting access to quality education.
All right. All right.
I don't know. Okay. I was about to talk about what we do in Elgon.
Finish up in 1 minute. It's okay.
Okay. So in Elgon Center for Education, what we've been able to do, first thing that really helped us is what we call the Structured Academic Mentorship Program. This is what we've been doing, and this program integrates both learners, teachers, and parents. Because we realize when we bring these people together, they will be able to understand. It also creates an open communication forum where children will talk like, this is the issues we face through in our lives and everything, you know. And parents even sometimes will understand now, because most of these children cannot always talk about what they go through. They don't tell their parents, they don't tell their teachers. But when we do this structured academic mentorship, they'll be able to open up. Also, we have something called Adopt a Class initiative in our organization, where we adopt a class like Form 2, and then we monitor their progress all around academic, life skills, and even attitudes all across to the entire when they finish. And then also we have the student leadership, where we are offering life skills and leadership skills to the student unions in order for them to promote a good balance between the administration and the student council. Thank you so much. For any question, we'll be able to continue talking.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taraja. And you know, I want to appreciate you, because there's one thing that keeps coming up, and it's about the thing about working together, the thing about different stakeholders coming together to engage towards improving the education sector. But there's one thing also you have outlined, that it takes both individual and collective effort. Just, you know, echoing what you've said about the parents, you know, we have so many parents who are not interested in the education of their children. So how is it that we get each and every stakeholder? You know, we've been talking about the ministry, we've been talking about the NGOs, we've been talking about the churches, but maybe it comes down to that unit of society, which is the family. It actually comes down to that unit of society, which is the family. At the end of the day, you know, what are you doing to enable your child, you know, to provide these opportunities for your child? You've talked about local Harambes, and thank you for outlining what you're doing, and keep up the good job you're doing. You know, just mobilizing young people to come together, to motivate, to inspire, and even to provide a little resources for the students in the area of Mount Elgon. So thank you so much for that. And right about now, I want to welcome Dr. Christine Juguna. Now, I think it's very clear that the government is trying. The Ministry of Education is trying, but we feel that more can be done. So Dr. Njuguna, one, is very passionate about the education sector and works with young people around Kenyatta University to be able to just help them realize their potential and grow projects that are able to reach out to other young people in their different societies. So Dr. Njuguna, karibu sana, and I'd like to ask you, from a perspective of a stakeholder, now in the Ministry of Education one, and I'll allow you to speak in the capacity of the ministry, but also being an education expert, what further action do you feel needs to be taken in the country so that we can have inclusiveness for all and, resource mobilization and everything, but also, we have models that have worked. When we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we have countries that are implementing it. So, what models can we look to copy, after this conversation and each of us deciding that, yes, I want to be a change maker in the education sector. What models can we look at in order to improve the sector? Karibu sana, Daktari.
Thank you so much, Sofina. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure to join all of you in this important discussion. And my name is Dr. Christine Njuguna. I am a lecturer at Kenyatta University. I'm a mother of one. I'm also a board member in 2 schools. I'm a student mentor at the university and also a mentor at ELF, Emerging Leaders Foundation. And I'm proud, very proud to see my students, Sofina and Brian. I really feel that indeed the education can also contribute positively to the development and livelihood outcomes of youth. And I want to laud all of you, from Taraja to Daisy to John, for taking that proactive role in whatever capacities. I really, really am proud of you. And without wasting time, I'd like to share. Could you enable me to share my screen?
Yes, in a minute.
All right, I have a presentation, and what this presentation will enable us to appreciate are the statistics. It's good we put the numbers. It's good we put numbers and really see what we are talking about. Sofina, can you see my screen?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
All right. So I lecture in the Department of Population, Reproductive Health, and Community Resource Management. And my specialty is in youth livelihoods and sustainable development. Now, I'll just maybe highlight my understanding of equity. And equity in education means offering individualized support to students that address possible barriers like poverty or limited transport. For me, I feel, equity is the process. Pardon me for that error. Equity is the process and equality is the outcome. So that is my understanding of equity and equality. And that pictorial representation simply shows us what we mean by equality vis-a-vis equity. So equity deals with more the principle of fairness, and equality tries to address the principle of sameness. Now, maybe we could ask ourselves, what is the status for Kenya, and especially in learning institutions? How do male and female compare? In employment, you can see there's a difference. Male at 9.7, employed, female at 9.8. At school, we have male being 9 million, female 8.7 million. In university, you can see male are at 733,000, female are at 519. But if you compare the urban versus the rural youth, how many are in the university? 848 in urban and 404. You can imagine half of the urban number, half of that is the only population of rural youth that are in the university education. Now, if we look at the enrollment, you can see, I'm just confirming what all of us have been talking about. If you look at enrollment by gender, the red color is the boy and the green color is the girl. People, those are the numbers. Yes, the enrollment has been increasing over the years, but you can see still there's the disparity between male and, the boy and the girl child enrollment in primary school. Again, when you look at the secondary school enrollment, yes, there has been an increase in enrollment. However, again, the disparity is there between the boy and the girl. Now, student enrollment in technical institutions by sex. If we look, for example, at Kisumu Polytechnic, we see that 2,223 male were enrolled, and you compare that figure with 1,267. If we look at the subtotal, you see that 13,106 male youth were enrolled. Compare that figure with 7,329. If you look at the last column, the last row, the total, 88,064 male were enrolled in technical institutions, and only 59,000 females were enrolled in 2013. And you can see when you move across the years, that has not changed. Yeah, that disparity is still being felt. Now, let us look at university enrollment by gender. If you look at maybe 2014, 2015, we'll see that the gender parity, you can see that index is down there. It has not improved at all. Look at 2011 and look at 2015. So we still need to do something. Now, this is very interesting, people. Look at this, enrollment in adult and continuing education by sex. Now tables change. We can see that the females are enrolling in this adult and continuing education more than the males. You can see there's quite a big disparity. If we look at 2014, we have 69.9%, compare that with 30.1%. So that was very interesting for me to note. And what are these gaps? After reading and from experience, even sitting in several school boards, I appreciate that poor quality and access to post-primary education is a challenge. Then secondly, ECD programs are still being left to the county government and private sector, and some important stakeholders, as was highlighted by the previous presenters, other stakeholders are being left out. Modest enrollment gaps between boys and girls still persist. Then there is variation in equity when considering the arid and semi-arid areas and urban slums vis-a-vis the rest of the country. Maybe we have not talked a lot about arid and semi-arid areas in our forum, but these are the people who are most affected. There's also an issue in equity in the distribution of resources, as was highlighted, especially teachers when reposting them in these ASL areas. Then there's lack of targeted interventions, such as scholarships for girls and the marginalized, as was highlighted by Daisy. Then again and again, there is inadequate social assistance for vulnerable groups. The issue of safety nets, really, when you look at the targeted households and who actually benefits from these safety programs, you'll be surprised. Because of the corruption there is, the vulnerable groups don't benefit from these safety programs. So that, of course, cannot address the challenges. What has the government put? In my understanding, and as we have heard and as we know, there's pre-primary and secondary education. There has been expansion, yes, of physical infrastructure, but as has been confirmed by Taraja, there's still a big challenge. And before we even talk about technology, these basic issues of infrastructure need to be handled. Then provision per capita grants for teaching and learning materials. Can you imagine, guys, in a school board, or in the school I oversee, learning materials, when money is released, money sometimes does not reach these public schools. Operations and maintenance and emoluments for the non-teaching staff, sometimes that is not considered in some of these budgetary allocation. Launch of several policies have been done by the government, as has been said. For example, the re-entry policy, where if a young girl gets pregnant, they're able to go back to school. I've presented the same in this table form just to show you how we are faring. When we talk of that the government has designed and institutionalized appropriate capacity building programs, you can see to what extent this has been achieved across in the rural area, in the urban areas, in the tertiary, in the university, and even in terms of the special education. This is according to the Equality and Inclusion Survey of 2015. I would encourage all of us to read that survey. It was quite informative because we get to really see what the government is doing. When we talk of transferring primary and secondary education functions to counties, how are we faring? We are faring poorly. You can see we are at 19.3%. When we say that the government is ensuring targeted budget allocation for special interest groups, you can see how we are faring across the board. We need the last column or row talks of adopting collaborative approach between education and other sectors. This is how we are faring. And that was as of 2015. So you can see that across the board, we are relatively doing well, but transferring the functions to the counties is really, really glaring. And yet we know money is being dispersed from the counties. So if there's no proper transfer and devolution, who is likely to suffer? It is the youth and it is these children. And therefore, the aspect of equity has not been addressed. Again, that continues. You can see what the government has been doing and what has been achieved. Maybe I'll refer you to that document. So if we benchmark against some countries in sub-Saharan Africa, we still appreciate as a region that only 92 girls per 100 boys are in primary schools. The country with the greatest inequity is Chad, if you aren't aware. Then in Guinea and Niger, approximately 70% of the poorest girls had never attended school, compared to less than 20% of the richest boys. Then interestingly, in Rwanda, the boys are doing badly and the girls are doing very well. Maybe we need to see what is being done in Rwanda and we can borrow a leaf. Again, this slide talks about issues in Africa, where women only make up 43% of primary teachers and 31% of secondary teachers. And maybe the question I ask, who is modeling for this young girl? If all they see are male teachers, who is modeling for the young girl? So in sub-Saharan Africa, the poorest girls are almost 9 times more likely to never have set foot in a classroom than the richest boys. So you can see the aspect of inequity. So Sofina, you asked me, which countries can we benchmark against? And I really tried to read through, and I came across Bangladesh and India. And what I'm happy to share with you is just what my previous colleagues were talking about. Like Taraja was talking about the aspect of the community not being involved. Then he talked about the glaring aspect of this vulnerable population and the disparity compared to the urban population. So what is Bangladesh doing? So the Ministry of Education is learning from inclusive practices in the non-formal education sector. So in this country, they have both formal, which is curriculum oriented, and non-formal, which is just expertise oriented. So for example, in a multi-grade classroom, a single teacher teaches learners from different curriculum grades at the same time. Then interestingly, the disadvantaged children are brought into mainstream education through multi-grade teaching. So the importance of this is that teachers in non-formal programs have access to specific training in inclusive approaches. And the MOE the Ministry of Education is now working closely with non-governmental organizations to align the non-formal education with the formal education. So they regard and they value the non-formal education, and they appreciate that there is a certain segment of the population that can only access the non-formal education. So it is just seeing how these two can work together. Now, in India, there is the aspect of community involvement. And this really confirms what Taraja was talking about. So there's a program named Log Jumbish, we could read more. And its main objective was to develop, demonstrate, and catalyze mainstream education in the locality and to ensure every child had access to basic education. And the motto was learning by doing and move gradually by receiving processes continuously. So from the start, they needed to clarify who constituted the community, and the program workers were explicitly asked to involve those who had been left out of the educational processes. This is something I liked. There was also a recognition that community participation cannot happen unless the program defines what participation was all about. Then similarly, the composition of the village education committee. Now this is what I wanted to highlight. There's a village education committee, and there was a core program group. This was decided in the early years. If in Kenya, we can have these village education committees, the aspect of retention in schools will greatly improve, because these are the people who will do the follow-ups. These are the people who will know which households need these targeted safety nets. So I believe, in my view, appreciating that we are yet to reach that discussion where we talk of technology, really, technology, yes, but do we even have, can we even retain our students in school for them to reach that higher level where we can talk of even adopting modern technology? So for me, I'm selling the idea of, can we have village education committees? And further action, as I summarize, as we have said again, we need better alignment. Yeah, we need better alignment then of policies. Then we need to review and align policies with our challenges and growing needs. Then the process of policy review needs to address the issues of inclusive education. Then we need clear strategies. Maybe again, this is very important. We need to know who will do what. Clear strategies in which responsibility for inclusive education is distributed across ministerial departments with the involvement of other ministries beyond education. And then maybe as I finalize, local education stakeholders need to be involved in the process of understanding, adapting, and developing education policies. Maybe this is what I'll take home, that all of us, in our own capacities, we need to keep doing what we are doing and even do better. Then finally, the national education policies should be rooted in the idea of education as a public good. And with those with that presentation, I want to thank you for listening. And back to you, Sofina.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. I appreciate you. I mean, it was such a short presentation, but we've been able to learn so much, especially the Lok Jumbish adoption in India, where they even have village education committees. I think for me personally, that is a great take home. But most importantly, I think I want to say one thing that has come out clearly. When we started this discussion, I asked the question, who should we hold to account? Who needs to do what? And I think one thing that has come out very, very clearly is that each and every one of us is responsible. There's this word, stakeholder engagement, that has kept coming up. It's even been very clear in all the 4 presentations that the Ministry of Education cannot do it alone. Not only should the Ministry of Education work by itself, but it should also incorporate with the other ministries. You know, if we're talking about, let's say, something even like water, you know, is it possible that we ensure no matter where the village, if it's an institution of learning, that there's actually running water in that institution? And yeah, so that just outlines how it's a collaborative effort. So before I hand over to Arnold, I want to thank all our speakers for today. You know, I would want to summarize, but I think each and every one of you has been very, very clear about what needs to be done, be it in the ministry itself, be it by the NGO world and the civil societies, be it by institutions such as churches and schools and student leaders, and each and every one of us who is interested in improving this sector. It definitely lies upon us, be it whether we have to, you know, carry out advocacy or we have to carry out a local Harambee. We are all responsible if we are to push this fast forward. And also, maybe this is just a shift. You know, we had talked about the 4th industrial revolution. Maybe that is important, but let's also work on the infrastructures. Several cases have come up, you know, of students learning according to the weather. If it rains, class is over. So for now, let's focus on the infrastructure. Then when we've got that right, maybe we could look towards competing with the rest of the world. So thank you all, and I'd like to hand over the session back to Arnold so that we can hear the suggestions, and if there are any questions, we can have our speakers take them up. Asanteni.
Thank you so much, Sofina. So it's okay that we open up the session so that our participants who would like to comment very briefly or ask a question can do that now, just for a few minutes. But first, I would like to read this question that I received on email from one of the participants. I'm not sure whether the person is here now, but they said no questions, but just address the challenge of youth who want to do short courses but are sponsored, and links kindly. So it seems this young participant wanted a place where they can access links to applications to scholarship. So in case there's a response to that, we can have it. Also, just looking at the comment section, there has been a conversation going on here. I hope you've been able to read through it. As I look through for any question, probably we can have a participant who would like to contribute or ask a quick question, and then we have responses. I'm looking out for hands, or you can just unmute and ask spontaneously.
Yeah, this
yes,
is
Brian.
Joe. Arnold, my concern was about, and you can see I raised it in the chat box there.
Yeah.
About youth who have knowledge, they have skills, you know, but no jobs. So it seems the whole conversation is shifting towards laying the responsibility upon the youth to, you know, like vouch for themselves and, you know, create opportunities for themselves. But I want to ask our speakers, how about we also shift this conversation to focus on the, the legal frameworks, the societal, and the government as well. And I know this has been spoken about extensively, but I would caution that we don't really like shift this whole responsibility to a young person who doesn't have resources. Like you're just getting out of school, you have the skills, you have volunteered, but at the end of the day, we also need to feed ourselves. So how then do you get value for the skills that you have, and making sure that, poverty does not affect so many young people as it currently is the status of our young people?
Thank you so much, Brian. So I think we can have quick responses, take a minute each. Job, kindly ask your question in a minute.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
My name is Job. I have a question or a comment or to pose a challenge to everyone.
Go ahead.
We're talking about the gap that it is there in the education sector. I want to ask, in the society, normally see a lot of people doing the evil things. What are we doing as youth to bring accountability and transparency in these places? Are the youth or the educated elite in the society taking active role in the management of these things? Because, for example, we normally find that schools in our community, they normally receive some funds. Are we volunteering our services to engage in it, in that we see accountability in that process? So my question or my request to all the youth in here and outside here is to engage in the board member, to join the board management of the school in order to implement what they are seeing that they're not doing. Because there are a lot of issues that are happening, but you're not doing anything. And let it to be our initiative to join the boards and to make our society more better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we can have a minute each for our guests. And please stick to a minute and then we'll finalize and close. Let's begin with who is ready. We can begin with anyone who is ready.
I'm ready.
Yes, Dr. Christine.
Can I go ahead, Arnold?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
As a youth, and I'm very proud. And a job. It is true that we need to take up spaces. We need to create space. And if we wait for the older population to create space for you and me, we will wait till kingdom come. So we need to be proactive. I have been proactive. I volunteered. Actually, it's purely volunteer. You just volunteer. You volunteer and I participate and I sit in school boards, and for sure, I'm able to see how disbursement of funds has been used. I'm able to suggest better ways of managing the school resources. So yes, we can bring changes, no matter how small or big, but we need to be proactive. And that is, Brian is saying, we do not shift the responsibility to the youth. But as we continue to trust and hope that the government will create jobs for us, in the meantime, what can I do? What can you do? Because for there to be jobs, the economy has to do well. Even become worse. So what can you do in the meantime? Before systems work for us as the youth, what can I do? What are you doing? And how can you empower your fellow youth to become a better person? I can say for now, but I think the ball is in our hands. We can't wait. We can't wait for the things to be right and be in place for us to have a good future. We need to really be proactive as we are already, and to continue with this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Christine. Abdul Karim, go ahead.
Okay. First, that question is very good, especially on the youth skills and employment. You know, as currently we are, it's about who you know in the employment sector, and that's very unfortunate. I've been looking about these reports that I was talking about since the Ominda report, and then from there it shifted to now that in 1985-86, when the McKay Commission came in, they were now shifting about the employability and the skills. And I find out that they started talking about the employability since then, and up to currently, when we are developing a CBC, we are still talking about the skills relevant for the young people to get employed. And it's a challenge here and there. And we all agree that there are a lot of some mismatch. But as young people, what can we do? When I graduated in 2016, I didn't have anything to do. I had so many disappointments trying to look for a job here and there, and then there are no jobs coming. Those that I got, it really disappointed me, and I left. And that's now when I sat down in my house with my kid, and then I realized that I think I have something to do in this world. So I just started. In fact, my Elegant Center for Education, it just started as an idea, because after so many disappointments out there, you're really trying to give your best, but then things are not working out. The county government is full of politics. To get any employment, you must know somebody. Your pocket must be thick. So I realized, no, I can't go that way. I looked back at my life. I looked back at the gaps that I oversaw, I went through, and I realized that there was gaps in education. So I just decided to start something. I never had resources, by the way. I don't have resources even at the moment, but that one did not stop me. The moment I started hitting the road, there are people who came on board and said, "Are you doing something good? How can I help?" Yeah, somebody will cover your transport to go visit a school. Somebody else will do something. And that is the journey that I took. Remember, Napoleon Hill once said, if you cannot do great things, do the small things in a great way. And always there will be a way. When you have a will, the way will come out. So use whatever you have, wherever you are, whatever you have, to start doing something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abdul Karim. I see Maria clapped for you for the beautiful closing remarks. Gadiel, kindly type your comment and I'll be able to read it. Let's hear from John.
Yeah. I think even as we bring this to a close, the questions are actually, they're real, because that's the reality of the ground. That yes, again, time and again, the leadership in our country is challenging young people to venture into job self-employment. But then I want to also ask ourselves as young people, as we look into the government, what is the role of the government in all this? When you talk about, is it the responsibility of the government to actually create an opportunity and say, job, come here and get this job? Ideally, as an economist, I believe that the work of the government is actually to create an enabling environment to actually help the young people and any citizen in any nation of the world to be able to have an enabling environment for business, for entrepreneurship, and for anything that any endeavor that a citizen would be having. And so I think it is important that we understand that the ball is actually on our court, just as we have said, and it will be said time and again. And I think we have come out of that era of saying serikali as idea, just looking upon the government to actually do all that. So the role of the government will remain to be an enabling environment. And whenever we look up the government, we feel cheated because we expect so much from the government, and our work in essence as citizens is actually to be at the forefront in making our lives better. But finally is to let us know that I was talking with a few friends some few days ago, there is a program that I'm running at the university for an innovation challenge. So students are competing for a prize. And you come to realize when you ask many students what is actually making them not venture into business, perhaps, or entrepreneurship, they will be quick to say that it's because they don't have the funds. But then you actually ask them, what do you want to do with the funds? So the ideas, people don't have ideas. And always they will say that, you know, I don't have funds, I don't have this, I don't have this. But the moment you give them funds, they get confused and they start wondering, what will I do with this money? I think we also need to ask ourselves, what is it that we can do, and actually test our ideas and polish them, so that in the event that we have opportunities, because the resources always proceeds, you know, when you have the vision, resources then will come way after. I think that is it for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, John, for the beautiful remarks as well, and for sharing your knowledge with all of us. So kindly allow us to spend an extra 4 or 5 minutes to hear from Daisy, her closing remarks, and then let's hear from Gadiel and from Zimbabwe Youth. Daisy.
Thank you so much, Arnold. Regarding that issue of jobs and the youth, I just want to say 2 things. As we wait for the government to create jobs for us, and as we wait for the formal employments, I would like to challenge the youth to get something to do, because there is always something you can do as you wait. Because if you make job searching to be your work, it will be even very difficult for you to be employable when an opportunity comes, because you will realize that most employers will be asking you, what have you been doing? Because if you graduated, say, 3 years ago or 1 year ago, between then and now, what have you been doing? So I would like to challenge us, get something. There is so much you can do for yourself, for the community. You can keep yourself busy, you can volunteer, and as you do that, opportunity will catch up with you. Secondly, I would like to challenge us as the youth to work on our soft skills, because much as there are few job opportunities, those opportunities will favor those that are ready. Keep your integrity on check. Are you someone who is employable? Check your communication skills. Check issues like team spirit. Be someone who is ready to learn. And when an opportunity comes, do not be someone who is choosy. Because all of us, if you hear our stories, we all started from somewhere and we did not find ourselves at the top. So start where you are, check on your soft skills, and I believe with time, it will be a different story. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Daisy, for sparing your time to share with us the knowledge and the beautiful remarks. So let's hear from Gadiel. Gadiel, kindly go ahead and give your remarks in a minute.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been very insightful, and it's a way forward for the next generation, and very good. The frequency has as a step basic information to today. So one to give them the necessary advocacy.
So it seems like we can't hear you clearly, Gadiel. Probably you can type your comments on the comment section.
Of course, there are issues that have been
All right. Let's hear from Zimbabwe youth. All right, seems like we do not have that. So at this point, allow me to bring this session to an end, and thank you so much for even allowing us to spend 7-8 extra more minutes over the time that we had promised to end this session. And thank you so much for taking time to be part of this conversation and for listening and sharing your knowledge openly with every one of us. And let's all strive to make a difference in our little ways or big ways, in ways that we are able to, for the benefit of everybody and for a sustainable world. So I sent a participant form in the chat section. So please make sure you fill it out if you took part in this session. I shall send it again on email, just in case you missed it. In addition to that, I shall send a feedback form where we request that you share with us your experience during this session so that we can be able to improve the next sessions. Once more, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. God bless you all. You can follow our platforms, our social media platforms on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and also subscribe on YouTube. Just search for Champions for SDGs. Until next time, stay safe, wear your mask correctly, and strive to make a difference. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody, and take care.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you, everyone.